All right, everybody, we're super excited for you to hear the interview this week. We just got done interviewing NFL football player and University of Utah great Britton Covey. Dustin, what impressed you from the interview?
Well, the same things that I'm sure grabbed you, Shaq, because we ended up asking all sorts of questions on some pretty deep subject matter. But whether or not you're an athlete or especially a parent, I think listening to this one is one of those that you're going to enjoy. Britton is a very deep person. He's deep thinker. His story's pretty miraculous. He might be a guy you see a movie made about someday. It really is a miraculous story. But he shares some things that you can tell he's really thought about some of the stuff that we teach and study it, especially for athletes. He's given a lot of thought to, and he had some well-prepared answers, which kind of prove that. And I think that it would be great for any kid, coach, parent to give this one a listen. Britton's one of the best athletes to ever come out of the state of Utah, and it's worth a listen for sure.
That's exactly what I thought. Every now and then we do one of these, and all of them really, but this one in particular, I'm like, I would really want to listen to that with my kids because of some of the things that he shared and just great balanced individual. So
and make sure you stay and listen to the entire thing, because the story he tells at the very end is one of the funniest stories I've ever heard.
Me too. All right, here's our interview with Britton Covey.
Welcome to the Sportlight Podcast for parents, coaches, and athletes. The Sportlight refers to the time in an athlete's life when they have increased ability to affect the culture around them and the increased opportunity to learn life's lessons through sports. This podcast aims to help parents and coaches capitalize on their athletes' precious time in the Sportlight. The Sportlight Podcast is brought to you by Especially for Athletes program.
Well, thanks for joining us today. We're here with Britton Covey, current NFL Philadelphia Eagle, former Utah Ute great and high school football great at Timpview High School in Provo. Britton, you were one of the most electrifying players I ever saw in high school. I didn't coach against you. I wasn't coaching at the time, but I do remember watching you and just thinking, oh my gosh, this guy's it's like video game football out there. The way you would shake and bake and move. And if anybody hasn't, you want to have some fun, go pull up some high school highlight films of Britton. You'll see kids getting cooked left and right with his shiftiness. And you played quarterback, so I was interested in you as a quarterback. You went on to college, and some people didn't think you'd be able to survive there, and you were sort of that prototypical, too small, too not going to be able to take the hits. I do remember you taking a hit against somebody once on, I think it was national TV, where you just got lit up coming across the middle of the field. And I actually used it as an example, Britton, on my Quarterback Elite social media on how not to throw a guy into a safety. I told the quarterbacks, this is what you don't do, especially to your best receiver. But anyway, you've surpassed everybody's expectations, and here you are now, playing for the Eagles, which is just awesome, especially for us who live here in Utah. So catch us up a little bit on what you're doing. You're out in Philly right now in your car because the rookies are taking up all the rooms in the building, you said, right?
Yeah. I don't know if people can see me right now, but I'm wearing a Utah Jazz shirt. I don't play for the Jazz. I wish I did. Might be a little bit easier on my body than football is, like you said, especially at my size. But yeah, here out in Philadelphia for OTAs, right? Quote, optional training, not optional for guys like me, but all the rookies have kind of taken over the building for the day. So I'm here in my car after our final workout of the week. We've kind of, we have 2 new coordinators this year. So we've been, having a little bit longer days and offensive, defensive installs and things like that. And then there's that new kickoff rule, which takes up even more time for the special teams. So we've got quite a bit on our plate at the moment.
Explain that rule really quick. And Chad, maybe I just heard about it the other day, but I'm not really clear on it. Explain that. What's the new kickoff rule?
Yeah, well, it's going to be fascinating. It started off with an effort to reduce concussions because most concussions happened on kickoff. But as they made changes to the kickoff a few years ago, it kind of became an obsolete play. There was maybe one kickoff return per game because these kickers are so good these days. They kick everything out of the back of the end zone. And so this new kickoff rule is it's an attempt to make it an exciting play again. And you are basically penalized if you kick it out of the back of the end zone. And so there's this landing zone that all kickers are going to try and kick it in. And rather than the kickoff team starting way far away, it's actually going to look like two lines. There's a line of the kickoff team and the line of the kickoff return team, kind of in the middle of the field. And once the returner catches the ball, those two lines are going to converge, almost like a battle scene in a war movie, and it's going to be really different. I think it's going to be an exciting play. I think there's going to be a lot of trial and error, and I'll bet there's some rule changes halfway through the year. I'll bet there's some really unique reverses and cool things you can do. I don't know if they're going to put guys with my body type back there. It almost reminds me more of a run blocking scheme. You might put some running backs back there. You could put offensive linemen there and run G lead or counter. Mm-hmm. But it's fascinating for someone who loves special teams. I'm really curious.
So you have to even catch they'll still kick it or whatnot. Okay. But if they kick it out of the end zone, they start at the 35 if you kick it out of the end zone. So yeah, there's the landing zone where they try and kick it between the 20 and the goal line. And nobody can move until the returner touches the ball or the ball touches the ground. And so you might see some squibs, but so hang time isn't important anymore either, because it's once the returner touches the ball is when he'll go and when everybody else will start. And I think you're going to get a bunch of funky kicks to try and make it difficult for the returner. And I don't know. Like I said, the biggest question for me is what body types are you going to put out there? Because speed isn't quite as important as it used to be because you're not running from so far away as the kickoff team. I think you're going to put a lot of linebackers, maybe even DNs out there. You know what I mean? So, like I said, trial and error, especially in the preseason.
You're saying that about the return team, but not the returner, right?
Yes. The kickoff team and the return team will be bigger guys. The returners, you'll still have small, quick, fast guys, but I think you might even have a little bit more running back body types back there.
Now that the return is not once a game, I do think it makes guys like you more valuable, though, because you get the ball in your heads. Like, you went your whole college career, and it seemed like everything University of Utah was doing was, how can we get the ball in Britton's hands and hope he lives, So.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think in the NFL especially, being a good returner, punt or kick, is all about picking and choosing your times to take risks. In college, I could lose 5 yards to get around the edge pretty much every time I wanted to, because I knew I would at least get back to the line of scrimmage, get 5-10 yards. In the NFL, if you do that, it's a tackle for loss, right? It's just not happening. These guys are too fast, too quick. So it's picking and choosing your times to take those risks, and then picking and choosing your times to just get upfield, right? And I think that's why there's this big misconception all the time with, you just put any quick guy back to return a kick or punt, and then after a few games you realize it's not that simple, right? You can't just be good at running with the ball or quick. There's a real art to it, and like I said, sometimes it's not flashy. It's getting upfield, and like I said, I'm not strong, but I can take a hit. So you take some hits back there.
I don't know how you've survived some of the hits you've taken, man. The one I was talking about earlier, you rolled around for a minute, and I wondered if they were going to bring a stretcher out, and I'm sure you remember it, but it was like I was yelling at the quarterback. I was so upset that he kind of hung me out, and then a couple minutes later, you were back out there doing it again, man. Your mom must have been just going nuts.
Yeah, that was against Washington, 2018. That was the most brutal game by far. Washington played a unique type of zone. And so I took two of the biggest hits of my career that game. The quarterback, who's one of my best friends, he threw me into a cover 2 corner first on a little shoot route. And then, seam ball against the backside safety. So I took a few big hits. I dislocated my shoulder and cracked 2 ribs that game.
Oh,
but I did finish the game, and that's what that's what I'll always talk about, because I did get destroyed.
I remember watching that game thinking, I feel like I'm watching Rocky play football, right?
Yeah.
you know those epic fights with Apollo Creed and down, everyone's yelling, "Stay down, Rocky, stay down."
You just want to go the distance.
Well, didn't that there's something to what you just said there, Britton. So maybe we can pivot into that, because you've always had elite speed, and you've known that. And any athlete who has an elite skill set, I've always told them you have a chance if you can maximize that elite gift that you have. But you have to be able to, expose and use and be in a position to really, use that as a weapon. You were able to use your speed and eventually use that in such a way that you were able to make it to the NFL. But you said that you finished the game. My guess is part of what you had to do is you had to just finish practices and finish games sometimes to prove that you could survive that sport at your size. Is that true? Was that part of your mentality? Just finish?
Yeah, I think that's, like you said, each person, each athlete kind of has a unique special skill set or ability. And for me, obviously there's the speed and quickness, but then the other thing is just my toughness. Maybe some people call it little man syndrome, right? But you really do have to have a little bit of that. The other thing is I've told my wife, so I really struggle watching basketball these days with a lot of the guys that will get hit and then be on the floor for 5 minutes. I told my wife, my goal is to pop up before the guy who tackles me, right? I don't want to give the guy who tackles me the satisfaction that he hit me, even if he hits me hard. I want him to get up to celebrate and then look and see that the guy he tackled is already up. And the other reason was, I said, if I'm down on the ground, I'm injured. I will get up. I'm not going to, be dramatic. I'm going to pop up, walk it off, So if I am on the ground, you know that I'm injured, but I'm not going to give you a heart attack in the crowd every time I get hit by going on the ground, So part of it is me thinking of my wife, right, and my mom, like you said, so they're not stressed all the time. But yeah, I had a realization early in my career that I was never going to be a big, strong guy. And so I stopped focusing on that, and I changed my mentality in like lifting in the weight room to just injury prevention. And so, I still try and get strong, but not really for the sake of performance as much as injury prevention. And, it's been great. I haven't missed a game in over 3 years. I've played all 36 games of my NFL career. And it's part of it is just working that injury prevention side of the weight room. And, you still get strong, but even if I do get strong, I'm going to be so much weaker than all these guys. So, focus on what makes you unique.
That's interesting. Like, what would you say to young people about injury prevention?
Yeah.
I know you have access to like the greatest minds when it comes to that. And some young people don't. In fact, they have some coaches, especially at the younger levels, that are telling them to do things that probably are on the other end of things. What would you teach us about that? What have you learned about how to lift to prevent injury?
Yeah. Well, this is what's so unique, is even in my career, it's been so different. I think about what I was told in my freshman year of college compared to what we're told now. I mean, part of it is just being young. You don't get injured as much when you're young. Your recovery when you're young is so much quicker. But I really do think that the new age athlete and training staffs are a lot more advanced than they were even when I was in high school. This idea of strengthening your muscles as you lengthen them rather than just stretching, right? Remember, you're always told when you were a kid that you got to stretch so you don't pull anything. And I think Tom Brady and his crew were some of the first to come out talking about how stretching is only important if you strengthen it as you stretch it and lengthen your muscles. And so when your muscle's in that vulnerable position, it's strong, not just loose, right? And that's why things like RDLs and stuff like that are so good. I've done so many small muscle groups. I probably spend 20 minutes a day on meticulous, dumb little muscle groups. I've got a cycle that I go through. On arm day, I do these things, and then on leg day, I do these things. So I try and do it each 3 times a week. One for the shoulders, and there's these tiny little things with small weights. Some of them are for the shins and ankles and knees. And just these little tiny exercises that you wouldn't even really consider. You would never go to like a Vasa gym to lift these. It's like you could do these in your house. But to me, I realized that health is being on the field, being present is more valuable than anything. So I just do those small things. And then, yeah, the rest of it really, there's some luck to it. Some people, I always feel bad for the guys that get labeled as injury prone, because sometimes when someone pulls an injury, it has nothing to do with how hard they've worked or their body. It's just a freak accident,
Yeah, it's not that they're not tough, and it's not that it's just that. Yeah. And it's true that one injury can sometimes then lead to another one because the body is now, not operating at 100%. And you're right, that does sort of get labeled on a guy as a negative, but it does have a little bit of that connotation that he's somehow not, that he hasn't prepared himself, or that's some sort of weakness, when it really is just a fluke. Sometimes it just, you could have been hit 1 degree differently against Washington, and maybe it's a spine injury instead of a shoulder, and it's a major issue, and you don't get drafted because they see you've got, bulging discs or something in your back, right? And so, man, so much of it's luck. When you were pretty young, Britton, somewhere in high school, I'm guessing, because I remember, like I said, I didn't live near you, but I knew who you were, and you had what we call the Sportlight. That's the name of this podcast. It's the name of a book that we have here, especially for athletes. The Sportlight really, came upon you. Now you were coming up during the time of the social media sort of growth and rage, but you weren't in it like kids are now. It wasn't as big of a deal as it is now, fortunately for you, I think, in a lot of ways. But was that attention that you were getting, or the pressure to maybe feel like you had to go out there and play a certain way, ever something that weighed on you? Or if not, have you seen it on other teammates, where the attention, because you could run fast or you were big and strong, something we would think of as, well, gosh, that's a blessing. Everybody should want that. He's so lucky. Have you seen that in your own life or in the life of teammates, where it's actually been maybe a curse of some sort?
Absolutely. I feel like this is what the vast majority of athletes kind of realize at some point. A lot of them, it's when they hit college. I think high school still is kind of a safe space, sweet spot, where the pressure isn't quite as big on your life. But for example, I had so many teammates in college who literally changed states, who decided where they were going to go to school based solely off of football. And then they get there and they're 4th string, 3rd string, practice squad or scout team guys, and scout team guys their freshman year and then their sophomore year. And then they start questioning. There's so much pressure from either their family or them, or just these expectations that they have for themselves. And they say, man, I literally moved from Florida to come to Utah to play football, and I'm not playing. Like, what is what am I doing here? What's my purpose here? And they get really sad and depressed. So yes, I've seen that. And I definitely think social media triples it. Right. And so one, I was blessed to have wonderful parents. I had great parents. So I had two older brothers who also played college sports, and they were really good. And my mom and dad always took me aside all the time just to say, like, if you don't end up being as good as your older brother Steven or what, it's okay. Right. And they told me that constantly, to the point where I was like, I get it, guys, but I think that is so important. I think there's this obsession from parents now, it well intended to get their kids in athletics. And sometimes they need to realize that you have to have that conversation with your kids. Even my older brothers would say, it's okay if you don't end up liking it, playing as well as we did, whatever. And that kind of gives you a security blanket as a kid or a player to go out and just take risks and try things, because it is okay if you don't pan out, quote, or work, if it doesn't work out. So anyways, having that purpose and that security to fall back on is so important. And I tell that to parents all the time, especially when I can tell with certain parents that are getting so obsessed with their kids' sport, which is okay. I mean, my dad obviously, but also he always qualified it with, this understanding of what was most important, and that it's okay if it doesn't work out or whatever. Social media is something I talk to kids about all the time too. And it's hard because realistically, you can't tell kids to just stay away from it. Right. But I'll tell you what, I learned here my first year in Philly, what was most important. One bad game in Philly and you will hear the wrath of, I can't tell you how many people. And I couldn't go on social media for a full year just because mentally it was so draining. And nobody cares about how that makes you feel or what you're doing. Everybody just thinks that you're just this NFL athlete, so you have everything great. And it was tough. And I think I learned a lot from that experience personally.
Man, there's a lot of meat in your answer there. I think Dustin and I both have 7 questions in our head that we could ask you. And such great advice, Britton. One of the things you said, going back a little bit, because I think this is so important, what you said about teammates coming from Florida, and not thinking holistically about a college experience and what it's going to be like to go across country somewhere and to go to a whole new culture, whole new everything for football alone. Like that's all they're thinking about is football. And it sounds like you might have some advice for kids in that statement, kids who are being recruited to go play sports. And I know you went through quite the recruitment process and went different places than your brothers and things like that. And I know you most likely thought very deeply about that. What advice would you give to kids who are in that situation so that they put themselves in the best situation, having been through it and witnessed what you witnessed?
Yeah. Well, like I said, there's idealistic advice and then there's realistic advice. Idealistically, I would love for every kid to, like you said, look at this whole situation holistically and everything. But even I didn't, right? I don't think that you really can tell a 16-year-old, 17-year-old who loves football more than anything in the world to think about a lot of other things when, you've got Utah or Tennessee or whoever on the phone saying you're going to go to that school because you want to play football, and that's good. I think that it's when you get there, building out a system of support and a system of something that you can fall back on in the idea that it doesn't pan out how you want it to. I would be so curious to find the statistics. I've thought about writing something about this and I've got some details, but just about the percentage of athletes careers that pan out how they want it to in college. And I would bet that a good portion, the majority, don't pan out the way they anticipated, expected, or hoped in college. And so obviously, if you're someone like me who's did pan out well, it's, you're so lucky. But I saw so many teammates. I mean, there was 100 guys on Utah's football team. 30 of us played. And the other 70 probably went there thinking they were going to play, hoping they were going to play, and it just didn't work out. And so it's creating that safety net for you just in case something like that does happen, so that you can be happy with your life, find joy in your football experience, even if you're not starting, find joy in your college experience, find purpose in your life. So I don't think it's about the decision making to go somewhere. Like, I think you should follow your dreams and try and focus on trying to be the best football player and dominating. But it's in the process of doing that, don't forget to build out this safety net of stuff just in case it doesn't pan out exactly how you want it to.
It's cool.
Well, and there's the truth is that there's only about 2 to 5% of high school players that are even going to be in that situation where they're going to have that, that discussion with themselves of whether or not they can go to this school or that school, because they're not 95% of them aren't going to go anywhere. They're going to go do something else after high school. So to those 95%, when you talk about how to get something else out of it other than just football, we see in schools, Britain, and this is a thing. If you can run fast or jump high or throw a ball hard or something like that, people will put plaques up in hallways. We have trophies. We have there every time we go speak at a high school, we bring up. I've said it I don't know how many hundreds of times. I could walk out the door of this auditorium, and I bet you within 60 seconds, find some display case somewhere honoring some athlete or some former team from this school, in some cases going back decades. And there's a picture of some All-Stater or All-American or All-State, state championship team or something. And then I say, but I've never yet seen the display case that honors the greatest mathematician to come through this school or the greatest scientist to come through this school. Because we honor athletes. If you're big, fast, strong, can run, throw, something like that, we're going to honor you, and we're going to turn you into these local celebrities. So to the 95% of these kids who, they play high school, what about the other kids, it's just over 50% that don't play any high school sport at all? It's like 40-something% of the school isn't involved in any sort of activity or athletics. Those kids can oftentimes become the victims of just being invisible. They go to school and nobody even knows they're there, because all the social excitement is around that, the groups that are doing things, the teams or the activities, the events happening at the school. You can't go back and redo high school. And my guess is you were probably a pretty alert, aware kid when you were in high school, of those 40 or so percent that maybe felt they weren't involved. But, how do we get athletes to remember the importance they have of this? God's given you this ability to play a sport. We in our country will make you these miniature, celebrities or idols, you might say. But how do you not forget about those kids at your school that aren't in those situations, who are really struggling, and do what we say, keep your eyes up, look for them, and do the work to help those people? Is there something that you can share with kids on the importance of that, being aware of others?
Oh man. Yeah. Like you said, Shad, I, as you're talking, there's so many things that you can talk about with this, with this topic. And part of it is like I said, realizing, what I realized my rookie year here in Philadelphia, that people even with athletics will make you this miniature, poster boy thing, but even that flips the moment that skill disappears. The moment I took one false step, in the Pac-12 championship and tore my ACL, nobody cared anymore about who I was for a year when I had to sit out. And that's eye-opening for the athletes. And I think that understanding that as someone who doesn't play athletics, that even these people that are held on a pedestal, that is not lasting. That's not going to carry you through a lot. Society is always going to value what they value, and I'm not going to let society dictate what I value. I mean, if society valued the right things, teachers would be paid as much as NFL players, right? My older sister is a high school teacher, and she, in my opinion, deserves to be paid more than what I'm being paid in the NFL. But that's not what society values. And so you cannot let society dictate what you value. And that's such a huge idea. And it's so hard to realistically feel that when everyone around you is getting the attention or things. And so one, I think faith is a big thing with that. I think having an understanding of who you are in whatever faith you profess, and what your purpose is. And then two, just understanding who you are, what makes you unique, whether that's athletics, whether that's in the classroom, in any area, and letting your joy come from that rather than the acceptance of other people. Like I said, it's so easy to say and so much harder to do, but even being aware of that idea, I feel like you're halfway there already. Just me being aware of the idea that I could be hated by most of the fans in a heartbeat helps me realize that I don't get my worth and value for my performance on the football field. And I think that a lot of people who don't play athletics almost have it easier in that sense of not having their value placed on what they can physically do on a field, right? You definitely have to dig deeper, I think. But it, like I said, don't let society's the importance that society places on things dictate what you place importance on.
That's awesome, Britton. It reminds me of the conversation we had last week with Zach Dart and conversations we've had with Max Hall, where they mentioned the importance of athletes recognizing that their identity is not a football player, a baseball player. They have way more important identities than that. They're children of God. They have their faith. They're a son. They're a husband. They're a daughter, a wife. Like there are these titles that are way more important than anything else that we'll ever have, and that are way more lasting, as you said in that comment. I think that's so significant for athletes to realize.
And a lot of times this concept goes in one ear and out the other until it doesn't. And that's okay in my mind. It's like I said, athletes, I think it's important they're told this, because even if it doesn't hit home in the moment, the first time that something happens in their athletic career that brings this on, it will hit home, and like I said, for me, that was kind of my ACL. Or for me, that was choosing to go on a mission halfway through my career. And the moment that you're not loved or valued for what you're doing on the football field or volleyball court or whatever it is, that's when it's going to hit home. And so I think it's important that we teach this as leaders, teachers, parents, whatever that is. Because, even if it doesn't seem like your kid's listening, they will when it's time to.
That's that is one of the more profound comments made, sort of in passing, maybe. But what you just said struck me there. I didn't even hear the last little bit of what you said there, because I was really taken by that sentence. It'll go in one ear and out the other ear until it doesn't. And I thought, oh my gosh, that there's a lot of truth there in parenting and even us as adults, and things that we hear from people we're looking up to for counsel or advice, is that I've heard it a million times. Okay, it might be the millionth and first, one time that it actually, you needed to hear it, right? And so maybe the parents, we feel like we're saying it over and over. We continue to reinforce this message or this whatever support to our child, and we don't feel like they listen or that they get it or that I love what you said right there, that they don't until they do, and you don't know when that time's going to be. So we got to just keep talking, just keep throwing it at them, and eventually it's going to stick, or eventually they're going to be held to the fire and realize, wait a minute, I remember what mom or dad or coach or somebody said. I can do this. I can get through this. I'm more than this. And just we have to keep driving it. We can't give up on it.
One thing too, Dustin, as you say that I sense in all of your answers, Britton, and it's probably a great tribute to your parents and older siblings and everything as you've already given, but there seems to be a great balance in you. And I don't even know if you recognize that about yourself. Like, you're quick to say, no, man, go for your dreams. Like, go after every single dream. And then also remember this, right? Because we live in this world right now of false dichotomies, of polarization, right? Where it's this or this. And the most intelligent people, the most balanced people are people that use the word and instead of or, right? It's this and this. Go after your dreams. Make people shut the door in your face. Go to the college you want to. And remember, you're not just a football player, right? And you seem to either naturally or intentionally live a life of balance. And I'm just wondering if that's something you intentionally try to do, or what do you attribute your ability to do that to?
Yeah. Well, I love the idea of the fact that we live in a world of false dichotomy right now. I 100% believe that with everything down to religion and politics. I really believe that the only opinions that will be loud enough that we hear about them are the ones that are extreme and polarized. And a lot of times things aren't as black and white as they seem. And life isn't as black and white. You feel, how many different emotions can you feel about one thing, And for me, like you said, it depends on kind of who I'm talking to. When I'm talking to someone and I can tell that they are just, I don't need to convince them to go for their dreams. I need them to realize that it's okay if they don't reach them. And then vice versa, when I'm talking to someone who I feel like is hesitant and scared to reach for their dreams, that's kind of what you focus on. But I think more than anything, it's just this idea of talking to the parents to tell these things to their kids, because I've seen so many kids that fear failure just because of what that means with their relationship with their parents. And I think that that's a really hard idea to grasp. And then I would say just the last thing is, I don't know. I just think that life truly is about just getting better. Like, life is about making mistakes and getting better, and just not getting better, but at the same time not being discouraged with how bad you are at something. And once you accept that, it takes a lot of pressure off. It's like, all right, well, I failed, but that's okay. Like, it's a step to success. And I don't, that's whenever someone asks me, what's like your why, what's your purpose in life, what's this? And honestly, I think the simple thing is I just want to be better in a month than I was today. And if I'm not, that's okay. I'll be better the next month. And I think that accepting that takes a ton of pressure off to be so perfect and good.
Yeah. I have one more question for you, and then I'll let Shad maybe ask one and kind of wrap it up, Britton, and we'll let you go. But so when we say eyes up, we don't talk a lot when we're in schools about there being a spiritual meaning to the phrase eyes up. we can do that on this podcast and not apologize for the meaning, but because I think that in today's world, especially that part of what the eyes up meaning represents is important, that we don't forget about it, that whatever you believe in spiritually, this idea of eyes up, looking to a greater source for help is important, more now maybe than ever. I know what the sacrifices you've made for other people, giving up 2 years of your life to go serve in the same country that I served in for 2 years when I was that same age. So it's obviously an important part of your life, your faith and your belief in serving and helping other people. But when we say eyes up, it means a lot of things. Eyes up to God and doing the work. What does that mean to you?
Well, first of all, I really do believe in God. I believe that God is real. I believe that he's there. And I believe that he is a big part of our lives. I don't know if it's like a chessboard and he's moving he's deciding my life, but I feel his presence in my life and I believe in him. And for me, eyes up is that idea that I just said of when something happens in your life that throws you for a whim, that confuses you, that, makes you panic, the tendency is to not put your eyes up and to not look towards God and to look around and panic. Not to get too biblical, but the story of Peter walking on the water, right? And the idea that he's walking on the water to Jesus, and when he starts to sink is the moment he casts his eyes down and realizes, what am I doing? What's actually happening? And regardless if you're a Christian or not, I think that story holds a lot of great allegory to life, and this idea of keeping your eyes ahead and forward and having that vision and purpose that's going to carry you through the storms of life and not make you panic and feel so full of anxiety about all the craziness going on around you, because you have that greater purpose, that vision towards something you're looking towards. I always used to compare this, I did a big lawn mowing thing in high school. That was kind of how I made money. And the key with mowing a lawn was not to look right in front of you, right? Because if you did, you'd look back and your line was all squiggly. You'd have to basically pick a point at the end of the road or at the end of the fence or whatever, pick one point and walk towards it and not let your eyes deviate from it. And then you'd look back and you'd made a straight line, or a lot straighter than if you were looking right in front, and I think that's another good example of it.
It's awesome. Thank you. Well, I have a question that I've been really curious to ask you, Britton. One of the 4 key principles that we teach athletes is we try to teach them that you can compete like crazy, which obviously you're an ultimate competitor, we try to teach them that word compete. It's like we're passionate about competing for things, but we train them to live by a principle we call compete without contempt, without hatred. You don't have to hate your opponents. You don't have to demean them or come up with all these negative things about them to motivate yourself or act like they're horrible people. And many here in Utah know, but around the country, they may not, that, the BYU Utah rivalry is a very heated, sometimes too nasty rivalry. And you kind of grew up with your brothers going to BYU, and then you go to Utah, and that probably added a little bit of flame to that fire. But I would just love to know what you would tell young people about learning to compete without hatred in their heart for their opponent.
Yeah. That's a good question. This is actually something that I've been in the last few months really thinking about, but thinking how and questioning myself how I feel about this concept. I was able to talk with some people I really respect about this because it's so intriguing to me. I talked to Craig Manning, who's the author of The Fearless Mind. It's a great book, the other day about this idea, because on one hand, you have this idea of your confidence stemming from your belief in yourself and your pride about your sport stemming from the fact that you care about your performance. And that doesn't always equate to winning and losing, right? That's what John Wooden, the great famous coach, talked about. And Lavelle Edwards used to talk about that, right? Is winning and losing doesn't always accurately reflect how you should feel about your performance. On the other hand, some of the most glorified athletes ever are the Michael Jordans, the Kobe Bryants, the ones who are such fierce competitors that they do make up stories in their mind about their opponent just so that they have a little bit of edge. And the truth is, I have a little bit of both in me. I think that, I wish I was this perfect saint and wanted to say, but sometimes when I'm competing in the moment, I have some anger in me that somehow it builds up this adrenaline in me and drives me to be great. And I do look across from the other to the other person and I say, I want to beat you. I want to beat you. And I think that is just kind of this natural inbred thing in me. But I think that the idea behind it is that can't be your only thing, because that won't carry you through the times that you end up losing, through the times that you are losing. That actually can make you almost look more down on yourself and question yourself. So I'm not completely against this idea of wanting to beat another person in the sport. I just think that it needs to be paired with something that will carry you through the harder times, which is this belief in yourself and your abilities, and you really are only comparing yourself to you and your past self. That is stronger in my mind, and it will carry you through harder times and times when you lose way more than the other way around. So I think that should be your base. And then if it is natural to you, I don't think it's a bad thing to just want to look someone in the eye after a big play and say, yeah, I just did that to you, because the truth is I do that. Most anyone in the NFL does that. But also some of the greats, that's not their base. Their base is even the greats that are glorified like that, the Kobe's, the Jordans, the Tiger Woods, they are relentless. They practice so much more than any other person, but it's usually in comparing themselves to their past selves. They're more frustrated with what they did wrong than focusing on the opponent. So anyways.
Well, and I would say, Britton, that Dustin, I know you have thoughts on this and then you could close it up, but that's exactly, I think, what we're meaning when we say compete without contempt, that you should want to beat the person in front of you. You're both worked way too hard to not care who wins. No one wants to play a game. I hate playing games, even board games, when no one cares who wins. I can't stand that, right? And so that competitive part balanced by that, that other part, that foundational part, that's where we're trying to help athletes get. I love the way that you articulated that.
Yeah. In the confines of competing, in that box of competition, I think all of this is absolutely acceptable. And I like you, and I played with Shad, so I know him, but like you, Britton, I'm a complete hypocrite if I said in the box of competition, I don't want to just rip the dude's throat out that's in front of me.
100%.
I wish I could say, I want to help you up. I don't want to help you up when I knocked you down. I've even said that before. I want you to sit there and think about it, but outside of that box, but I think as athletes, we can come to respect the fact that, and Chad has mentioned this before, that you're giving me the chance to be that way for 2 hours on a Sunday afternoon in the NFL or a Saturday or what. Like I got this lion inside of me that I can't get out except for these couple hours a week that I get a chance to just unleash this beast that I have. And you're giving me the chance to do that. And you're going to unleash yours and I'm going to unleash mine. And they're going to battle each other. But then at the end of it, there should be this immense feeling of respect that thank you for letting me get that monster out of me for an hour and fight you. And you know what? You got me today, but next time I see you, I'm coming back stronger. And that's what drives us, right? And that's okay. But when we step off of the field, we don't have to go on to Instagram and say, yeah, how'd you like that? Right? We don't have to show each other up. We don't have to take it in and try to humiliate and embarrass somebody and or get so personal with them that we're attacking family members or just the other stuff that sometimes goes on that I think can try to ask. We box it up and I'm competitive. It's a mind game. I think there's a line there that we have to be careful with because we're watching politicians right now who will say and do whatever to get somebody to believe them in the name of it's just politics, right?
Yeah.
It's a dirty business. It's just politics. It's just business. It's nothing personal. It's dirty. It's dishonest. It's not truthful. And be competitive. Like, let it go. It's okay. Respect your opponent that they're giving you that opportunity. But then there can be a level of civility and humanity to you at the same time. And that's my guess, Britton. There's no way you could survive as long as you've survived in the sport of football if you didn't have that beast inside of you that you had to get motivated sometimes to let loose.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think you put it greatly. I mean, even I've got some of my best friends ever are BYU football players that I've played with and against. So it's, doesn't extend much past the field for me.
In the moment, I mean, if I was playing one of you guys and we were playing one-on-one basketball, in the moment, we'd want to each other. But then we'd go grab a bite to eat after. And, there's nothing wrong with that. I want to ask you one final question just because it's an awesome story. And I saw what I thought was a car seat in the back of your car earlier. Is that true? Is that a car seat?
Yes.
Okay.
It is.
I love it. We're so Utah and Philly. You got your Utah Jazz shirt on, the car seat in the back of the car. I love it. Tell me the story, or tell all of us the story of you not being recognized, trying to get into the practice facility or to the game because they thought you were a fan and not a player.
Yeah. So, basically, first home game, I was on the practice squad still, but I was elevated to the active roster. And because I wasn't on the active roster, I wasn't on the list for the security guards. And so I pull up in my Toyota. I pull up behind some of my teammates. Probably didn't help that I was in a little Toyota, and they're in a G-Wagon and Tesla, But they basically said, who are you? I said, I'm the new receiver or return man. And they're like, well, you're not on our list. I'm like, yeah, I was on the practice squad. They're like, can you verify that? And I didn't really know what to do. So they said, look, you just got to go park with the other practice squad players. Then if you are on the practice squad, like you say. And they pointed me to basically where the tailgaters. I don't know if they were just trying to get rid of me. So I parked about a quarter mile away. I had to pay $30 to go park in the J lot. and a lot of the tailgaters recognized me on the way, and they were really confused. And I had to kind of ask for directions on what gate to enter, but it was a pretty rich experience.
That's one of the greatest all-time stories ever, man. Like, you're out there, guys are out there barbecuing hot dogs or their hamburgers and hot dogs, and you're getting directions to, hey guys, I got kickoff, I got to hustle.
And then there's your whole life, Pee Wee football. You've dreamed of this moment, when you're an NFL football player playing in front of the home fans, and then you show up to the parking lot and they're like, you park over there.
Yep.
It's like probably not how you pictured it in your head, but made a way better story.
I'm envisioning the guys from the movie Invincible. If you haven't seen that movie, that's the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm envisioning those guys as you're walking by them trying to get directions, thinking that you're supposed to be on the team, and these guys looking at you like, who is this guy in the Toyota thinking he's going to return a punt today?
Yeah, that's what it was.
Well, listen, man, we appreciate you joining us. Great stuff there, Britt, and we're all pulling for you, buddy, and got a lot of fans out here that you don't even know you have, and more so for the kind of person you are. We know you're a great football player, but we don't just bring great athletes on this podcast. We try to get people with substance and with something to share that might help a parent or a kid or a coach out there that's trying to be a little different and navigate through these tough years of their life. So again, we know you got a lot going on and you just finished practice. We appreciate you taking a minute to hop on with us, and man, heck of a good luck this year, and we'll be pulling for you.
Thanks, guys. It's been a blast, seriously.
All right. Take care, Britton. Well, Shad, that was awesome. I knew Britton was a deep thinking, positive, uplifting, inspirational type kid. I've heard him speak before. But when you get him really in a setting like this, where he has some time to contemplate some of the questions we asked at him, you can really tell that he's a guy who really gets it. Football is a lot more than just a game to him, and he lives it. And he had some impressive insights and thoughts there, I thought, today.
Absolutely. I love that interview. One of my absolute favorites. I'll be a Britton Covey fan for a long time. I always knew he was great at football, right? And that says a lot about all of the athletes. I think I've had this thought with every single athlete that we've interviewed. We see him on the field. We see him as the athlete. We see him when the spotlight is shining on him. I love this podcast because we get to take a step back with the Britton Coveys, with the Brendan Schoolers, recently with the Wally Joyners of the world. And we get to realize these people are more than just athletes. They think about stuff and they have philosophies that guide their lives. And I really loved what Britton shared with us. I'll return to those words many, many times. And so anyway, great interview. And we hope everyone will like it, share it, and as always, keep your eyes up and do the work.
This has been the Sportlight Podcast from Especially for Athletes, sponsored by Coca-Cola. You can learn more about Especially for Athletes by visiting the website at especiallyforathletes.org. You can also learn more about the book, The Sportlight, by Shad Martin and Dustin Smith at especiallyforathletes.org/book.